Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on.
It's pretty shitty out there, huh?
I like the rain. Keeps everybody inside and washes everything clean.
I was stalked inside a psych ward by Straight for Shady. Trigger warning for sexual harassment. The story happened when I was 18 and in intensive eating disorder recovery. I didn't know it then, but I had highly dissociative BPD and PTSD. One night, I physically fought my friends badly enough that they called the eating disorder center. I don't remember what I did. I just remember feeling trapped and in danger. When I arrived at the center, the cops were already there. I was still out of it and was moved to the stretcher with cuffs on. I received a court order to go on a 72-hour psychiatric hold, and then I would have to go back to 24/7 care and participate in another outpatient program because of this. That hospital is where the story of perverted men, who I believe were sex offenders, took place. One man was manic, and the two of us played Uno a lot. He was a really sweet guy, but hadn't come down from his mania. He wasn't the problem. In fact, he helped me get the other men away. I was the youngest woman there, being barely 18 at an adult unit. I didn't realize that this would be something that the men in there would drool over so much. And I fully understood that there were probably sex offenders in that unit, and they deserved treatment too. So I tried not to let anything bother me. But it got to a point where I couldn't be outside my room without being harassed. A man, let's call him Jake, had some serious problems that I didn't know much about. I'm almost certain he was put there because these incidents probably happened in public. He may have been charged with some kind of public indecency crime. He was in his late 30s or early 40s. He didn't talk much, but as soon as I stood anywhere near him, his hands went down his pants. He didn't try to hide it, in fact. He wanted me to see it and would make direct eye contact with me. Sometimes he would creep up behind me and I would jump, hearing him breathing heavily because of what he was doing. I told a nurse about it, who blamed my clothing. Joggers and a flannel? Like, what the fuck? At shift change, I told another nurse who didn't care. My room was at the end of one hall and he was across from mine. Jake began to follow me and stand right outside of my door for as long as I was in my room. He even tried to rush in after me once. I shouted at him and slammed the door, but of course there are no locks in a psych ward. He didn't leave, but he did take a step back. But he began following me with his hand constantly down his pants and would move closer and closer to me until I could feel his breath. No one gave a shit about Jake specifically doing this to me. After all, I was only one patient. Finally, I told the overnight nurse, who was shocked and disturbed by Jake's actions, despite me trying to ward him off. She was the only one that cared, and she managed to switch Jake's room to the other side of the unit. He didn't stop, but knowing he wouldn't always be outside my door was a relief. Along came the second man, who I'll call Jackson. I believe he was in his late 20s or early 30s. Jackson seemed to be in a sane state of mind, and I never found out why he was there. At first he was nice, like the Uno guy. But that stopped one morning when he grabbed my book from my hands and wrote his number on it and said, "We need to hook up when we're out." All I said was, "Give me my book back." And he turned it into a stupid game where he would move my books if I wasn't touching it at the moment. He followed me as well, but in a way where he was obviously trying to flirt with me. It was completely different than Jake, who never really spoke. Jackson never left me alone. If he saw me, it didn't matter what I was doing. He would come over and make inappropriate comments to me when all the staff could hear. They didn't care at all. Jackson was ballsy in the worst way. He slyly began to touch me and would get visibly angry if I rebuffed him. This is where Uno Guy was very helpful. Uno Guy was large and intimidating, while Jackson was maybe 5'6" and had a slight build. The time that infuriated me with Jackson was when I was speaking to a nurse and he jumped at me to startle me. I have a very strong startle reaction from childhood trauma, and he thought it was hilarious to push my buttons that way. It didn't matter how many times I told him to stop. He took everything I said like I was a silly little girl who didn't know what I was talking about. Once he snuck up on me and grabbed a bit of skin near my right boob, and he pinched and twisted it. He used his nails, too, so it did hurt quite a bit. He wouldn't let go, and the nurse even laughed while I was telling him to stop because I didn't like it. Jackson just laughed at how I couldn't take a joke. I told him I was about to break the rules and swing on him. Then the nurse cared. Not about what Jackson did, but about what I said. I pointed out that Jackson broke the rules of no touching and no hurting people. But it didn't matter. For the rest of my stay, Jackson continued acting that way regardless of my response. He was a menace, but Jake was the one who frightened me more. Jackson was loud, sexist, and entitled. Jake was quiet, sneaky, and clearly had some kind of compulsion to jerk it when he saw me. I was so relieved when I was discharged. I've been to 4 psych wards, and they've all been bad in their own way. This was the first adult unit I had been in, and having older men doing the most was not something I expected. Unfortunately, when I came back to treatment, that was a whole different beast to face. Scary Encounter in the Woods by Target Altruistic. I can remember almost every little detail of this crazy encounter me and a friend had in the woods that still sends shivers down my spine when I think about it. Back in May of 2020, when COVID first shut down all the schools, I was a senior in high school, and me and a friend would hang out at their house almost every day. This friend lived in a nice small town in South Jersey and lived in a very small neighborhood. The neighborhood was really just 2 side streets that connected at the top and made a rectangle. Behind it was all woods and no houses in sight for miles and miles, except for one small side trail that led to another small neighborhood off to the right of that one. One night, around mid-May, we were just chilling, and I remember seeing a skateboard in their garage, and I wanted to learn how to ride one. So we grabbed it and went to the back connected street right at the wood line. There was a small hill in the road so I could get practice. When we got to the hill, which was only like a 2-minute walk, I noticed a path in between 2 houses on the back street. It was curious what the trail was. Then I kept practicing going down the hill, and ended up hitting the smallest pebble known to mankind and fell and fractured my wrist. Fast forward a day, and the following night I brought up that path into the woods and asked my friend if he had ever been back there, and his response was somewhere along the lines of, "Yeah, I go for walks back there at least twice a week." We both thought it would be a little fun adventure, but all I can say now is it was going to be the complete opposite. We both brought small handheld flashlights and didn't use them until we passed both houses on each side of the trail entrance. And, like I mentioned earlier, there was a side trail that led to another neighborhood, and we didn't feel like going there. Decided to go off trail and go deeper into the woods. That was another decision that would later turn on us. After walking deeper in for about 5 minutes, we heard what sounded like something crunching a bunch of leaves in front of us. We both stopped and shined our lights in the direction and saw nothing, both thinking it was a deer or something. After that, we decided to go in a new direction away from the crunches, and another 5 minutes, we heard the same crunching noise in front of us again. We shined our lights again and saw nothing, and at that moment it started to rain slightly. Both of us were a little creeped out and knew something or someone was down there with us. I got a bad feeling and said quietly, "We need to get out of here ASAP." But our dumbasses went off path twice, and when we finally got back on the original path, all I remember was hearing the same crunching noises of sticks and leaves behind us again. At that point, it started to rain pretty hard, and we started speed walking. The next second, I decided to turn around and look, and all I saw were 4 flashlights coming right at us, almost running at us. After that, we started full-on sprinting and somehow managed to run right past the exit of the trail back to the road in the neighborhood, and we were really about to try and climb one of the house's giant fences to get out of there. But that wasn't going to go so well with me and my fractured wrist. So the only other way was to run back towards where the lights were. Surprisingly, they weren't there. They were gone. We got a small sense of relief, but we were still a little freaked out. And I ended up being the first one off the trail onto the road, and my friend decided to casually walk out, and I kept telling him to move faster. And then the next second, all I saw were 4 separate flashlights running again, coming up behind my friend. And that's when I yelled, "Run!" And luckily he did. We sprinted down the street and went around the corner, and I turned around to see what looked like 3 or 4 people standing near the entrance of the trail, not moving. I mainly saw them from a dim streetlight that gave off just enough light to make out some figures. We ran back to my friend's house, locked the doors, and felt relief knowing we were safe. To this day, I refuse to go near that trail again and wonder who those people were and what their intentions were. My friend and I started to talk and give out solutions of who they were. And if they were cops, they would have announced themselves. And why would they have been that deep in the woods with no cop cars around? We immediately eliminated them. No one had followed us back down there since the noises were first in front of us, and it couldn't have been another group from the side trail because we would have seen them coming down. Whoever it was most definitely already down there before us, and had to be watching us for quite some time. Not a single word from them was spoken, and they were chasing us. I still strongly believe to this day whoever they were definitely didn't have good intentions, if they actually had caught up with us. Sorry, this story might be a lot, but I haven't really talked about it to too many people for fear of judgment or anything else. So here I am now, sharing a real scary encounter that I had in the woods. The Foster House, submitted by Hydra. My mother had a friend who took care of foster children. They ranged in age from 12 to 18 years old. She bought this house in the early 70s and transformed it from its previous boarding house trappings to become just a regular home. Then she brought the foster children in. And that's when it all started. Typewriters went crazy as soon as the lights went out at night. They would turn the lights on and all the sounds would stop, and the funny thing was that they didn't even have one typewriter, much less several to constitute such a racket. Televisions all over the house would turn themselves on and off, even the ones that didn't have a remote control. The sounds of people running up and down the long staircase again and again for hours sometimes went on. And strange talking whispers at night, words that never could seem to be heard, happened all the time. Then, one night, one of the older kids woke up with a start as he heard footsteps outside his room. He opened his door and saw an old man in tattered clothes, covered in what he said looked like algae, limping down the hall. He freaked out and shut the door and finally fell asleep and woke up to all the other kids in the hallway looking at piles of algae on the floor. and wet footprints leading to a blank wall. Every night after that, there was the smell of stagnant river water in that hall. And all that stuff was pretty harmless. Scary at times, but nothing damaging. All of it continued for several years until a new kid came to the home. The moment he stepped into the doorway to be welcomed by his foster family, all of the kitchen cabinets slammed open at once, and that smell of river water at night dissipated, but objects like bottles and glasses and plates were discovered smashed on the hallway floor by some unseen hand. One night, the new boy woke up to his bed shaking like there was an earthquake going on. He went to jump out of bed and fell 6 feet to the floor from where his bed had floated upwards. He screamed out for help, and the bed slammed down on him. Not fell, slammed as if pushed by a giant hand. It even broke some floorboards and shattered the oak posts of the wooden bed. Thankfully, he wasn't hurt too bad, but he refused to sleep in that room again. That type of havoc went on for weeks. Things the boy had brought with him ended up mangled or missing, like an electric guitar that became split exactly in two. Whenever he was alone somewhere, he would report a cold breeze in the area and said he could hear whispering, so he decided to try to never be alone. Finally, the foster mother couldn't take it anymore, and she hired a psychic to come and exorcise the house. She wasn't religious, and the church had just brushed her off, so the psychic it was. And when she came, she suggested a seance to understand the house first. She suggested that the newer boy be there, as well as the other children. During the seance, everything was fine. Some things were moved, and a cold chill came and went. And then the psychic asked the spirits in the house to leave. The cabinet doors in the kitchen slammed open again, and it became icy cold. The new boy began to choke. The mother tried to help him, but she fell to the floor and couldn't get up, like someone was sitting on her. And the boy stood and was pushed against a column in the room. The psychic screamed for the spirit to be gone, to stop, to go. Finally, the other kids were able to drag the boy out of the house, and he had developed deep bruises on his neck in the shape of fingers. He left the house that night to live in a temporary home until he could be placed somewhere else. When he left, the damaging events ended, but the others continued to this day. I've been there many times. The last time I was there, someone grabbed me from behind, like when someone sneaks up on you to scare you. When I turned around, there was nothing there but a cold breeze to hit me in the face. I left, and I won't ever go back there. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like me to narrate, email it to Uncle Josh, truescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. If you like what you've heard and seen and you're catching this on YouTube, give the video a thumbs up. Leave a comment. I'd like to know what you thought of the stories, and if you're not a subscriber, hey, why not subscribe? Tell a friend about the channel. All that stuff does help out with the algorithms. Follow me on social media, and if you'd like to take a step further in supporting what I'm doing, find a link in the description to my Patreon page, and consider getting yourself some Uncle Josh and Campfire Crew merchandise. A link to my TeePublic storefront is in the description as well. Everyone, be excellent to each other, and until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.